If you have not read Sacred Spaces, if you have not heard of Sacred Spaces before, when I was given the award for the 2015 overall Military Spouse of the Year through Armed Forces Insurance and Military Spouse Magazine, I had this really crazy opportunity to travel with the Secretary of Defense overseas to visit troops that were deployed. And their whole idea behind this was there were not ever military spouses that had a chance to go overseas and see what deployment was like. We only hear that from our spouse when they come home, and I think this applies to first responders too. Like when they're coming home from work and they're telling you about that tough call that they went on or what happened on the streets that day or whatever, all we can do as family members is just kind of imagine it in our mind and do the best we can to picture that. And oftentimes we find out through hearing stories when our spouse is later telling somebody a story over at a dinner party or something like that, we've realized all of a sudden that the picture that we had in our head was not the accurate picture of what actually happened. We just did the best that we could to imagine it. And that was it happening a lot in my life. And so the whole idea to taking a military spouse overseas with a Secretary of Defense was to give that spouse an opportunity to see what deployment actually looked like, to actually talk with troops while they were deployed. What they wanted, what the Secretary's office wanted, was for me to be able to write about it, to relate it in a way that military families could maybe experience it with me or learn something from that experience, or at least learn from what I had learned. So although I traveled with the press corps, the group of press, it was ABC News and the Washington Post and a whole bunch of others that I just think are amazing people. I learned so much from even just watching them every day that we were together. So even though I was part of the press group, I wasn't really there to document what was happening in the world strategy stage or what was going on with the actual war, although I had a lot that I needed to learn. I just didn't know until I got there. So that's where Sacred Spaces starts off. We were actually about to move when this trip was given to me, and I'm going to give you guys lots of inside information that you may not have gotten from the book if you've already gone through the book before. And that's another reason to join the discussion group, so that if I pop in and give you guys some extra information, there may be some things that you might hear that you've never heard before, even though you've read the book. So interestingly enough, we were about to move at the time that we got this word that I would be able to travel with the Secretary of Defense. And here's some information you probably didn't know, was that during that time, Matt and I had just decided, for the sake of our marriage, for the sake of our family, there was so much happening in my world because of this award, so many traveling opportunities and speaking opportunities. We had just decided that I would take a break. We had just decided that for the sake of the move and to decrease the stress in the house, that I would take that break and not take any other opportunities until we got to the other side of the PCS. So I would love, for those of you who are watching already, we already have 6 or so watching, so I know other people are going to watch this later. I would love to know from you guys, how many of you guys have PCS recently? I know we just PCS, so it's a great time for, if you've just PCS, to read through the book as well. Stacy is watching. She's a good friend of mine. She was part of our MSOI group. She's the Coast Guard Spouse of the Year my year, and is just like a sister to me. And so Stacy, I'm sure you remember during that time, during that year, how stressed I was, going, I'm in over my head. This is too much, and I don't know who to talk to. That was a lot of what was going on and why we decided to take the break. So I'd love to know from you guys that are watching, have you read the book before? If you have, how many times have you read it, and why maybe you're wanting to go through it again? So share with me a little bit of what's your intention? What would you like to get out of reading Sacred Spaces again, or maybe even for the first time if you are doing the book club with me? So we had just decided to take this break, and we were in the process of moving when I had this opportunity. Of course, I was pacing in our bedroom when my husband came home from work, and I didn't know how to break the news that, hey, I know I promised that I would take a break, but how do you say no to the Secretary of Defense? I mean, this is an opportunity that few people get to do, and so how do you say no to that? And so, of course, when Matt came home, he was like, well, you can't say no to this opportunity. You have to go. And we also decided during that time, after lots of talking about it, that if I was going to do it, I was going to be all in, that I really needed to really take great effort to put all of my emotions, all of my feelings, everything that I could into, I had a pop-up that just happened, into learning as much as I could about this process. So today we're really only going to talk about the prologue so that those of you who are just now getting into it have time to get the book. If you feel like you want to get the book and go along with us, you don't have to. If you want to enjoy the book club each week when I do a video like this, you can. And just, I know that there's going to be information that we'll talk about that will make a difference. So basically the prologue is basically walking you through what was going on in my life at this point, how we were getting ready to move, and also the idea of sacred spaces, which I'm going to unpack more in chapter 1. But the idea was, how was I going to make this trip actually where it wasn't just me going overseas and doing what all of our spouses do, which is coming home and doing the best that I could to describe this experience, and it wasn't going to help anybody at all. So what I knew from being a counselor and working with people with PTSD is I knew that we hold a lot of our memories through the sensory parts of our brain. So whether you've had a great experience, maybe it's delivering your child and becoming a mother for the first time. Some of you guys have had God moments where you've just been praying somewhere and you felt like God was speaking to you, and you know exactly where you were, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what you were hearing, what you were seeing when those joy-filled moments happened, and it carved out a memory for you in your mind. Well, traumatic memories are formed the same way. When something big happens in our life, we engage all of our 5 senses, all of our senses like open up, and we take in all this information, and then your brain almost like scars it into a memory, if that makes any sense. And so sometime even years later, you can smell a similar smell. It lights up the sensory area of your brain, and then you flash back to when you smelled that last at a very big moment in your life, whether it was filled with joy or whether it was filled with trauma or sadness or grief or anything like that. So I knew in order for me to fully capture this whole experience and not only remember it, but make it something that was memorable for me and for other people, I knew I was going to have to engage my 5 senses. And that was almost an experiment. Like, I couldn't guarantee that it was going to happen. I just thought maybe, just maybe, I could get something out of this if I paid attention to those 5 senses. So Jenny is saying that she's read the book 2 times, and he's going to have his first deployment in 11 years. Oh man, it's like starting over, Jenny. It's kind of like when they say, when you have children, if you have a 5-year gap and you have a child and your oldest is 5 years or older, or your next one is 5 years older, then it's basically like you have an only child again. So I would say it's the same thing, that if you've not experienced a deployment for a long time, it's almost like not going through it for the first time, but you almost have to really pay attention to all those feelings. And that's going to be true of us as well. So when this assignment is over, I'm sure that my husband is going to be going into deployments, and it will have been a long time since he is deployed. And I know I'm going to go through the same thing. So let me share with you my intention, the reason why I'm going through this book again. It's been 3 years, and my life completely changed from writing this book and watching so many of you guys go through the book and seeing it change your life as well. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys that I had no intentions of writing a book. I didn't even know if I could write a book, but something was compelling me to write what I was learning, that it felt really big and it was more than just a blog. And so my life completely changed because in the course of this journey, which I think you guys are going to find out too, that I realized that if I wanted to change my marriage, that it was going to have to start with me, that I needed to change something about myself. And I wasn't sure quite what that was, but it started with me being willing. It started with me being willing to go on this trip, to make myself very uncomfortable, to face fears that I had. I had a real fear of going to Afghanistan and Iraq. I had a real fear of leaving my family during a very vulnerable time when they were literally in the middle of PCSing. So you're going to find out in chapter 1 that I actually got on the plane the same day that my husband was at home receiving our household goods. Like, it was a complete role reversal. And so I was afraid to leave. It was a huge risk for me to leave, knowing that my kids were in a vulnerable spot of transition. My husband was in a vulnerable spot of doing that by himself. It felt very selfish for me to go. It felt very exciting for me to go too. I have, or at least I struggle still with a huge fear of very large planes. And I was going to have to get into a C-17. And I was afraid of that. I was afraid of making a fool of myself. I was also afraid of the insecurity of being around, honestly, some of the most important people in our military world, in our military space. And could I even do this job? There was so much insecurity. And so my life completely changed because I was willing to take the risk. And so I'm asking you guys to take the risk, even if you've read this book before, take the risk to go through the book slowly, stay with us chapter to chapter each week. It's going to be very tempting for you to read ahead. I'm not saying you're going to get in trouble for reading ahead, but I hear from a lot of people that they want to read through it quickly because they just want to sit and devour it. And that's okay if you do it. But as long as you're reflecting week to week on what you're getting out of each chapter, it's very important for you to sit in the pocket, is what I say. Like, you have to sit in the pocket of your five senses and really engage and use your imagination. Put yourself in your spouse's shoes. Be able to put yourself in what you're feeling and thinking and sensing. I'm highly encouraging you to journal as you read through it, because there's going to be stuff that's going to come up in you. I didn't know, and I talk about this in the prologue, I didn't know until I said yes to this journey that I had a lot of resentment. I thought that this was just an exciting trip to go on and go see some really cool things overseas, which it was that. But I also didn't realize that I had a lot of resentment that I had harbored because of two very difficult deployments that Matt had gone through, all the moving we had done as a family, everything that it asked of me as a spouse, having to transition my career everywhere, having to start over every time, adapt to new things, and the constant chaos and the constant surprises. And I had a lot of resentment because I just wasn't enjoying that aspect of the military life. And I know first responder families feel the same way. You get to this place where you feel like there are days that I'm just not having fun with this. This is really hard. And sometimes I don't want to do it anymore. But we don't say that, do we? We don't actually say that out loud. And we're afraid that and maybe sometimes we do. Some of you guys are saying it out loud. Some of you guys might be saying it aloud too much. But for a lot of us, we don't say what we really think and feel out loud because we don't want to make our spouse feel guilty or have any other negative feelings that come up. And this is so true of serving spouses as well. I actually had someone reach out to me and ask, can serving spouses do this too? Can male spouses do this too? And the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, I would love for everybody to do it as a couple. So if you're looking for something to do as a couple, please consider doing the book together. The discussion guide and the questions in the group are going to be geared towards both sides. And your marriage can be so much different when both of you are working on this together instead of just one of you. But I can promise you that if it's just you, that you're going to get just as much out of it, and you're going to see your marriage change. And more importantly, you're going to see you change, because that's what happened to me. I changed. And my hope is going through this again 3 years later, I know in my heart that I'm ready for that change too. I'm ready for that next level of change. I need that in my life. My marriage needs that. My family needs that. And I'm ready to break out of any plateaus that I personally have, so that I can be the best version of me. And that's important. So a couple of things for you to think about. For those of you who have some maybe local book groups that are doing it together, maybe for those of you who are doing it virtually and you have your own Facebook page for a small group, please let me know about that. And if only you feel comfortable about it, feel free to invite me into that small group, and I'll be happy to pop in on occasion. Sarah says, yes, the resentment is real. Thank you for being honest with that, Sarah. I hear from so many spouses that are reading this, even into the prologue, they're like, oh my gosh, me too. I don't think I noticed till now, at 20 years, many moves and deployment duties, it's been a roller coaster, and I feel like I put my life on hold for his career. And until this year, I don't think he ever appreciated it. You know, I think that one of the things that we can learn from this is the ability to communicate some of these feelings in a healthier way. That's one of the things I needed to learn how to do. I needed to be honest with myself. I needed to be honest with myself on what the resentment was actually about and take a deep look at that. So Sarah, if you've not gone through this book before, that's one of the things that we're going to unpack throughout the book is what are the feelings that we have and why. And for service members too, they're going to go through this and go, I didn't realize, because Matt, you're going to see throughout the book, Matt's side of things too, as he's at home watching me go overseas, what he's experiencing from a service member perspective. So I wrote this also for service members to read through and go, oh, that's what my spouse has been trying to tell me. Or maybe you just didn't have the words, Sarah, or anybody else that's watching. Maybe you didn't have the words to be able to share. And I've had so many spouses take the book to their spouse and go, this is what I want to say, but I just didn't know how. And I felt bad because I didn't want you to feel bad, because I love what you do. We love what they do, right? We love to be a part of that. First responders and military, we love it, but it's still hard. And we have to be able to talk about what's hard about it. Let's see, others are going through their PCS. Yes, Angela, please consider talking to you guys, talk to your spouses, that this is not about what Corey, the military spouse, is telling service members they should do and think about. I was very careful during this trip to listen to troops, both female troops, male troops, to talk with all of them. And I asked them the question, what do you want your family members to know that you don't feel like you can say? And then I took that information, and it's in the book too, because this is also a tool for you to be able to hear from your service member and things that they've not been able to say either. So that's so it's perfect for your service member to read through it, and they're going to see themselves in the book just as much as you're going to see yourself. Let's see. I'm already resentful a month into our marriage, having to make that. Yes, PCS is hard. And you know, the next episode of the Life Giver podcast that's coming out later this month, or here on the 15th, that's coming out, is me and Matt talking actually about this PCS. And I actually, here's a spoiler alert, I actually talk about having a little bit of a breakdown for this one. This one was hard for me. So you're not the only one. And this is our 7th move in 8 years. So I totally get that. Let's see. Sarah, I'm so glad that your marriage is needing this. There's so many families that need this too. And so many of you guys, I think, are going to see yourself. Please hear my heart that me doing this book study with you, doing my personal book with you guys, is not about self-promotion. It's about, number one, I've not done a book club online with my book before. And I figured that maybe you would get a little bit more out of it, not only hearing from the author, but hearing some firsthand things that you didn't get to hear before. And for me to unpack even how my life is different 3 years later, and also how I am going to experience the book going through it again, because I guarantee you I'm going to be very convicted going through this again. There are some things that I need to take a look at in my own life again, or in a new way. And so I plan to be vulnerable with you just as much as when I went on this trip, my commitment to be vulnerable throughout the trip. And so know that I also mentioned in the prologue that in addition to me sitting in my 5 senses and really engaging everything that I could possibly engage in, really being thoughtfully aware of everything that was happening to me and around me, that I wanted to be really vulnerable and raw. So what I did during the trip, which you guys are going to get to experience, because I will post links for this and I'm going to share with this throughout the week, that as I went overseas, each day I would get back to the hotel and I would do a raw video vlog or a raw video YouTube video where I shared in a multi-sensory way, as best as I could through video, what my experience of that day was like. So you're going to get to read through a chapter, read through some things that were happening for me. Then I'm going to also share the video that I had made on the day that I experienced those things, so that you get to see and hear in as many senses as possible some of what I experienced. And so it's a whole other reason for you to join the Life Giver group page, where you guys can dive deeper. I didn't want to do that on this page. It doesn't give you as much room for you to dialogue and discuss as much. So okay, thank you for liking the podcast. There's also going to be supplemental materials along the way as well. So after I wrote the book, I interviewed some of the people from the book that you're going to be able to hear if you want to listen to extra things. There's podcast interviews with people throughout the book. There is just some some fun supplemental stuff that we're going to have. So it's going to be a really, really great experience for all of us. Okay. So let's see, anything else? Okay, so other than that, the last thing that I want to walk you guys through with, I'm going to try to keep these videos as brief as possible, but you guys should know me by now. I can't do anything in less than 30 minutes, and I'm okay with that, and I hope you guys are too. So I'm a therapist. We go 50 minutes, so that's what we do. So one of the things that I'm encouraging you guys to do, I'm going to give you the opportunity to do this even if you're not in the discussion group. I want this to be an enjoyable experience for you. So I want you to know some things that you can do to really take this journey and take it as deep as possible and be as intentional as possible as you go through the journey. So here's a couple things. Number one, make sure you have the book. I don't care if it's digital, if you got it from me, if you got it from someone else, if you got it from somewhere else, but make sure you have the book so you know what to read. And then also after this video, I am going to post the Sacred Spaces Intentional Marriage Commitment card. So I am going to give you a PDF where you can just print it off if you want to, and cut it out and put it on your fridge, bathroom mirror, whatever. I'm going to walk you through what that is in just a second. If you want the actual card that I have, you've got to order the book through me, because I make the cards and order the cards, and so that's the only place you can get them is through me. But I am going to give you a digital download where you can download it and do it however you want to. It's more important to me that you participate than where you get the card. So print it off on cardstock if that's what you want to do, and have it be on cardstock instead of regular printer paper. So that's the Sacred Spaces card here. And then of course, I'm going to talk you through the blue bracelets, which is also really important. Give me 1 second to pull something up here. Talk with me, guys, about those of you that have blue bracelets. Tell me, go ahead, foreshadowing, and tell me about your blue bracelets, because we're going to talk about that next. Sorry, I had a kid that was texting me. All right, so if you have blue bracelets, let's talk about those. So in order for you to have an intentional commitment in reading the book, I ask you to consider doing one thing to pursue your marriage. So just like I did the one thing to say yes, I'm going to go on this trip. Yes, I'm willing to take a step out of my comfort zone and pursue my spouse. Because basically me saying yes to the trip was, I am going to make the decision that I am going to go on this journey, and I am going to choose to see this experience through my spouse's eyes. That was me making the intentional effort to pursue my marriage and pursue my spouse just in that one way. So I'm asking you to come up with one thing that you can do to take a risk to choose your marriage by doing one thing. Now, I know I am saying something to some of you guys that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, makes you, that resentment bubble up just a little bit, because a lot of you guys, especially if you're military spouses, you're resentful, you are tired, you're exhausted, you don't want to put any more effort in. Because I hear from a lot of spouses that they say, well, I don't want to go first because I'm the one that always does the work. I'm always the one that says we need to go for counseling. I'm always the one that says we need to read a book. I'm always the one that's putting in that intentional work. And yes, I am saying it's still important for you to be intentional and choose to pursue your marriage. At no point should we stop pursuing our marriage because we're just tired. And I know that that's a huge risk for me to say that. And when I wrote this book, I thought, oh my gosh, people are going to throw my book in the trash because I already have spouses that are tired and weary. And when I tell them it's time to get started, they're going to be resentful and they're not going to read the rest of the book. And so I know that what I'm asking for you to do is tough, but trust me in this process. Those of you guys who have blue bracelets, help me speak to the power of this, that when you choose to take the risk to do just one small thing, that you're going to read this book and commit to one small thing, that alone can start to change your marriage, because it's going to start to change you. So the intentional card gives you the place to write down that one thing, okay? Now, it has to be measurable. So I hear from a lot of people that say, I'm going to love my spouse better. There's no way to measure that. You can't decide at the end of the day, did I love my spouse better today? I don't know. I may have done something, or, oh, you know, that one thing that I did, I'm going to count that today. So that's not intentional. You have to come, and this makes it even easier for you. You can choose the smallest thing you can think of. If your marriage is in a really bad spot, it's okay for you to choose something very small. Like, I'm going to commit to every day say one kind thing to my spouse. Or every day when they come home from work, I'm going to say one thing that I'm grateful to them for, or one thing that I'm grateful about their job, that I'm grateful for the job. It can be one small thing. It can be that you're going to give your spouse a kiss every day, that maybe you're not in the habit of doing that, and that's what you're going to start doing. Choose the one thing. So I'm going to be vulnerable with you. I've thought about this a lot over the weekend, and I was thinking, what is my intention going to be this time? And so my intention this time is I realize that I give a lot of my best to all of you guys. I give a lot of my best to my work, to the podcast, to counseling, to whatever. And at the end of the day, I get very tired and I'm very just kind of zoned out because I'm naturally an introvert. So I realized over this weekend that especially after a long PCS, I may not be giving my best to my family and to my spouse, that I need to reserve some of my best. And so I wrote that I am going to intentionally give my best by being kind in a very specific, like words of kindness, very intentionally to my husband. And I'm including my kids in this too, but primarily it's to Matt, that every day I'm going to make sure that I don't give kind of that apathetic response or the tired response, that I'm going to find whatever energy I have in me to give a very intentional, kind, very present response that I can say that I'm delivering something in kindness, even though I might be tired or even though I might be wanting to do something else or whatever, that I'm going to be more intentional with my words. And so and then it also asks you, the card will ask you for how many days are you going to do that. I personally put 90 days. There's a lot of people in here who've done it for a year. I'm going to be sharing some of those stories as we go along. Sarah Bosham, good friend of mine, who I think this is your third or fourth time going through the book, Sarah. She also has a small group virtually that she's going through, that you can talk to Sarah. I'm pointing out Sarah if you're interested in doing that as well. That she's going to, I decided to do things he's asked me to do without grumbling or complaining. And I have to stop and remind myself, but it's paid off. That he's felt love because that's his love language. It's a perfect example of something measurable. Angela has said that she's seen the benefit of this as well. Okay, so you're going to come up with something intentional. Sarah Bosham's example of that was perfect. And Jenny also up further mentioned that she started this when we did this as a group in Wyoming 2 years ago. She's still wearing her blue bracelet. So we're going to walk through what that is for, but it's a reminder for her daily to not pick up past hurts and let that come between her and her spouse. I love that one, Jenny. So if you're not sure what to do, come up with something very, very easy and specific. Don't stress about this too much. Then you choose for how many days you're going to do it. You can do it for a year. You can do it for the duration of the book club. I'm choosing 90 days. Because I figured that's the duration of the book club, and that's when fall's going to get really busy, and that's my busy season. And so I think I'll probably have a new goal when I get to that point. And then the last thing it walks you through is the change I hope to see in me and my marriage. This is so important because if I just put, I'm going to give my spouse a kiss every day, and I don't think about what's my purpose in doing that, what am I looking to see happen, then you're going to be half into it. Honestly, you're going to half-ass it the whole time. So this change is very important for you to be able to say, that this is what I hope will happen. And I'm hoping that you're going to choose something that's also realistic. So what I'm going to do by me being more intentionally kind to my words and more purposeful, to not allow that fatigue to show through my words, the change that I hope to see is that my husband is going to see his worth by my actions, that he's going to know that I love him because he sees me intentionally being very present and kind. It's not that I've been unkind in my words, but do you guys know what I'm talking about? Have you ever just been so tired that you're just kind of existing around everybody and you're just not as intentional as you used to be? That's kind of where I've been lately with the move. So, okay, so that's what your bracelets are for. So any groups that are getting together that have 8 or more, even if it's a virtual group like Sarah Bosham's. So if you have a group that's 8 or more that's gathered together where you're privately discussing the group other than my group or here on this page, I am excited about that. I want to know that you're doing it. And it's my honor to send you guys blue bracelets. And all these is paracord bracelets. For those of you who want to do this individually, who don't have a small group, I'm going to post as best as I can an instructional video that I got from somewhere else. It's not me doing it, but I'll show you how you can make it where you can get some paracord. And I like paracord because, like Jenny was saying, she's been wearing hers for 2 years and it hasn't fallen off in 2 years. So there's something really durable about the paracord. It's not pretentious. Nobody's going to like really ask what it's about, although I think you're going to have people that are going to ask what's up with that. And you can be honest and say, I'm changing my marriage, and it's a reminder for me daily of how I'm going to do that. But the blue, I think, is also patriotic. It goes for first responders as well. It also looks good with almost everything that you wear. You can wear it to the pool. You can keep it on in the shower. It doesn't really get dirty. So if you choose white, it's going to look dirty. But if you want to choose a different color, that's totally fine. But I'd love for you guys to post pictures of your bracelets. Your bracelet is a daily reminder of what you put on your card. So I'm going to put my card up on my fridge so that I am held accountable. That's the hardest part, is that I don't want you to hide what you're doing. And many of you probably want to. And that's not going to get you very far. And the purpose of this is not so that your spouse can be like, did you do your nice thing today? Like, you didn't give me that kiss. It's not about that. It's about holding you accountable. And it's about also, I want your spouse to see that you're trying to get a win in. Does that make sense? I really want your spouse to see that you're trying, to see that you're pursuing them in a very specific, intentional way. And it's not about them necessarily holding you accountable. And honestly, what would be so bad if they did? It's about you being held accountable for yourself. And it's so your spouse can see the effort that you're putting in and how you're specifically doing it. And I guarantee you that it's not going to come across obligatory. I hear so many people say, well, I don't want to put it up there because then he's going to think I'm not being genuine, that I'm only doing it because it's on the commitment card. That's bull, okay? Because when we do things that are kind and good and loving for the right reason, which is the hope that you want to see in your marriage, when people are knowing your why of why you're doing it, then of course it's going to come across intentional. They want you to win at that because they probably want to see the marriage get better too. So even if they hold you accountable, fine, but you don't have to ask them to hold you accountable. It's just about you showing, I'm going to pursue the marriage. I'm not telling you you have to, but I am choosing to be different in the marriage because I know I need that. So your blue bracelet is a reminder for you to do it outside, out and about, when you're at the pool. It's a daily reminder, like Jenny was saying, to not pick up past hurts, or to remind myself that when I'm at the pool with my kids, I'm also promising to be kind to my kids. So am I intentionally doing that right now when I'm at the pool too? Here's an opportunity, Corey. Are you doing it? So that's what the blue bracelet is for. Join a group of 8 or more. Even form a Facebook page. Give me that information. I'm going to post a link where you can kind of give me some more information about your group and give me an address to send those bracelets to. I will tie them myself and send them to you in the mail. So that is the gist of the book club. That is the gist of the prologue, is basically just setting up that I realized that I was in a very tired place, in a place of resentment, in a place of just weariness before I even started this trip. And I had to embrace the fact that that was true. I tell you a little bit about my mother-in-law. That's a true story, that my mother-in-law actually told me, perhaps the amount of love that you have right now, whatever stage of your marriage, however long you've been married, it's enough. Right now, it's enough. And so we're just saying, do the next right thing. And that's how you get your marriage to a place where now I can say, Matt and I have been married 20 years, and I hope for many, many more years. But 20 years is long enough to go through some very intense ups and downs. And some of those you're going to read about in this book. And I'm very vulnerable. Matt and I are both very vulnerable with some of those ups and downs. But I can say 20 years in that the thing that makes a marriage succeed is your willingness to have work ethic at it. And that's what we're going to start doing. I posted this yesterday when I was thinking about meeting with you guys today, and that's the last sentence of the prologue. And I posted this on the Facebook page as well. So it basically says, ultimately, this is the mission of every marriage: the pursuit of understanding a spouse's wounded heart, the humility of forgiveness, and the journey from pain to restoration. Some of you guys are in a place where your marriage needs to be restored, and it can be. Trust me, it can be. It's my favorite thing to do, is to see marriages restored. Some of you guys have spouses that have wounded hearts. Maybe it's from their service, whether it's a first responder or whether it's a military member. But their hearts are wounded because they've experienced death and loss and stress and separation from you and separation from being a parent. And all of this stress has taken a toll. My father-in-law, that mother-in-law that gave me that advice, that the marriage that you want comes after years of that work ethic and just being present. She is a first responder spouse. My father-in-law is a retired police officer, and his dad was a retired police officer. And if she could say that to me, and if her marriage is still together today, and that they've taught both of us that work ethic, then you guys can learn it too, and know that this will apply to your marriage as well. So some of you guys have spouses with wounded hearts, and my hope for you is that you're going to see their heart through new eyes throughout the study, that you're going to have new words to speak to them, and that you're going to be given words to give to them that will restore your heart as well, because I think that your heart is going to be tended to as well during this. So before I let you go, is there any other questions that anybody has? I thought Sarah asked me, can you get it on your Nook for e-readers? I believe the answer is yes. Check Amazon and check militaryfamilybooks.com. That actually has a sale on it right now digitally. So if you cannot find it, please reach out to me and I will connect you to them personally where they can help you with that. But I want to say it's almost an absolute yes on that. Please ask questions now if you have them. Let's see, some are asking to join Sarah's group. And thank you guys for sharing this with other people. That's awesome. I have other people willing to start a group if you can get 4 or more. I have other people willing to start a group if we can get you plus 4 or more. I think, oh, you guys are talking about joining a group. Okay. Would it be valuable to people not in the military? Yes, Sarah, great question. I have a lot of parents that read this book. Honestly, I personally, when I worked with the publishers, I honestly didn't want it to be necessarily only military on the front cover, because I knew as a clinician that works with so many different types of people, not just military and first responders, that everybody has experienced a sacred space in their life. Everybody has gone through something traumatic, or something joy-filled, and trying to explain that to other people. So let me give you an example of that, Sarah. I had somebody reach out to me who had lost a child that was not military or first responder, and they read through Sacred Spaces, and for the first time in her life, she said that she had the words to be able to describe her pain, but also describe it to other people. Because sacred spaces is when we've gone through something really big that did engage all of our sensory skills, if that's the word. So, and so many of you spouses at home have gone through sacred spaces where you experienced something really big back at home while your spouse was deployed or while your spouse was at work, something that took every bit of energy, every bit of grit that you had to survive through it. It could have been a day with a toddler, or it could have been like my experience of having a car accident on the highway while my husband was deployed. I had to figure that out by myself and deal with my own fear, deal with my kids' fears, and do that by myself. That was a sacred space that there was no way I could explain that to my husband when he got home, what that was like. And so this wife who had reached out to me had gone through the loss of a child, and she found herself continuously angry at people around her because they didn't understand, and she would try to explain what that was like for her to lose a child. And nobody kind of was present and there, and no matter how much she described it, it just didn't make it better. And so for the first time in her life, she had the words to describe it. She said, I realize now it was a sacred space, and that it's okay that they didn't fully understand it, and that it could be sacred. It could be set apart. It could be something that was, it changed the trajectory of her life. And it's okay that other people couldn't quite understand that, but now she has the words to not only describe it, but it also gave her the ability to lower her expectations so that she didn't expect other people to experience because they didn't live it. So if somebody has lost somebody important to them or gone through anything big in their life, in a lot of ways, my military spouse of the year was a sacred space that was very intense. And it took a lot of energy from me and from Matt and I as a couple to figure out that year. That's hard for me to explain to a lot of people. And that was a sacred space in a different way. So yes, the answer is it's definitely something that if you want to give it to extended family members to understand the military life, awesome. If you want to give it to that grandmother who her husband served in the military, I mean, man, we'll talk about restoring your marriage after years, 40, 50 years of being married, and for the first time being able to talk about it as a couple, or at least understand it. Taya Kyle read this book after losing Chris Kyle, her husband, and she even said that she wished that she would have read it back then when he was still alive. But even reading it after he was gone, she had new ways of understanding him and understanding herself. So there's so many people that can get so much from reading the book. So yes, the answer is I think that this book can apply to anybody. Let's see. Have you run into any concerns about the bracelet being non-regulation in uniform? No, Jeremiah, actually no. I've had service members that have actually worn that. If you have any issues with that, put it on your ankle. You know what I mean? You're like not going to see it every single day, but do what you need to do. So I don't think that that would be an issue because maybe you're just not the Marines that are rolling up their sleeves. But no, I've had a lot of service members that have chosen to wear it. But again, your command is going to be different no matter where you go and based off of your rank and all of that kind of thing. So my here would be my suggestion. It would be is if you are interested in doing that, talk with your commander and tell him actually what you're doing. Say that I'm going to work on my marriage. I'm doing a book study. I'm doing it on Sacred Spaces that is about military marriage, and see if you can get other military couples in your unit to go through it with you. So, and I think that if your commander understood what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, I think for that period of time that you've put on the card of the period of time that you're being intentional, I have a feeling they might be more understanding. Get your chaplain involved as well and explain what it is that you're doing. I always say if you explain to people what you're doing and why you're doing it, they're far more willing to be graceful on some of that. So please get back with me, Jeremiah, and let me know whether or not you're able to resolve that, because I'm sure there's other service members that would love to do this too that may want that question answered, and maybe you might have words to share with them on that. You could do a rubber band as well, maybe. Sure, Sarah, you could do that. I think that in and out of the water, that might be an issue after a while. So what you do you. So if you want to do a rubber band, that's fine. I attribute in my head rubber bands to like correctional behavior. That's what we use it as therapists for. But absolutely, if you want to do a rubber band, that's fine. Sarah Bosham says, I know parents of service members who've read this and it gave them so much insight to their children's lives. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I think that that's plenty for today. I hope that this was helpful to get you guys going. Read the prologue if you haven't already. Join the group, which I will update the description of this video after we're done here to kind of give you the link for the group. I will also post in the group and also in the comments here the marriage card that you can print off and do that. And if you're part of the discussion group, I'm going to ask you guys to share what you end up putting on your cards, maybe for a little bit of accountability, but also to give other people ideas of helping them form what it is that they're going to be intentional on. And also be graceful with yourself. If you need like a week to decide what it is that you want to work on, that's okay too. Just tell people, I'm thinking about it, but I need about a week to figure that out. That's totally fine. I took the whole weekend to figure out what that was going to be. So I will post all of that in the comment thread here. More discussions that will be in the discussion group where I'm going to actually use the discussion guide for you guys to answer the questions that go along with the book. The journey for real starts this coming week. If you would like to go ahead and start on chapter 1, you can definitely do that. We're going to talk about chapter 1. It's called Heeding the Call. We'll discuss that right here next Monday here at noon Central Standard Time. We'll process that as well. So thank you guys so much for being excited about this with me, for joining me. I can't wait to share with you more stories about this as we go along. I'm nervous. If you're nervous, I'm nervous too about going through my own journey again because it was a sacred space for me. And so I'm nervous to go through this and see what changes happen in my heart as well. So thanks for joining me, guys. I hope you had a great 4th. I hope you have a great week. Read Prologue in chapter 1 for next week, and I'll meet you right back here next week. Otherwise, I'll see you in the discussion group. And again, if you have a Facebook page, let me know, and I'll pop in whenever it's convenient for you guys as well there too. Okay? All right, guys. Thanks so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.